Ois Gimel. So now the Rebbe says, "V'al pizeh yesh levayir," based on we explained before the two levels of chotzer, and the level that you need an open chotzer to make it Reshus Yochid min HaTorah would still qualify, but midrabanon you would need a mekura to make it a Reshus Yochid in order to make it into a Reshus Yochid. You would need to have a roof over it. Is because there's a difference in the level of ra that we're trying to deal with over here, and on the gross level of ra, it's sufficient to make walls, even if it's open. But because it's a behemoth that wanders and you make walls, that makes it already a protection. But when we're talking about the level of the intellect of the person, we're talking about the higher level over there, we need to be more careful because over there, the klippa, the yeshus, is on a more refined way. You cannot tell so easily. And over there, you need mekura, so medivrei sofrim, which midrabanan, which we're trying to raise you on a higher level. It's not the minimal level of the Torah. Over there, even though there is a chotzer, it has walls, it's still not the protection. You also need a roof. Let's look inside. Gimel. Based on this, the different levels of the klippa that we have to attack, and we have the thick level of klippa, we have the refined level of klippa, we have the behema, we have the oiv. So yesh levar, we can explain. Ze shahadin shechotzer she'ene mekura hu kekarmeli, is this that we say that a chotzer which does not have a roof is considered a karmelis, or midivrei sofrim, that's midrabana. Min hatoira, just having walls is already a rishus hayochid, but midrabanan we require to have more than just walls. It will still be a karmelis. Kishmir as ha behema b'avodas ha'odom, because when we talk about the minimum amount of level to guard the behema in the person, to guard the nefesh habahamis, b'avodas ha'odom, in the service of the person, he beiker b'negeya l'machshava diburu ma'ase, it's mainly as it relates to the person's thought, speech, and action. The bottom line, what the person thinks, what he speaks, and what he does. That type is the nefesh habahamis, that because of the desires of the animal soul, it's possible for a person to stumble in some isur, God forbid. So how do we protect and guard the behemo? That is by fencing in the courtyard. The place where the behema finds itself. B'mechitzas with wall. So min haTorah, those mechitzas are sufficient to go ahead and protect the animal. Hainu. So what does it mean to fence? That he doesn't do that which he wants to do, but he does what needs to be done. What is the shmiras ha'oif b'avodas ha'adam? When we talk about watching for the bird in the service of the man, of the person, is dakus the nego canal. That is as it connects to the refined level of noiga, I said before, not the lower gross levels of noiga, but the refined upper levels of noiga. Will be iker lekoiches apnimium. That's mainly not in machshava dibur ma'aseh, the levushim, the garment, the external, but the inside of the person, the intellect and the emotion, seichel u'midas. The seichel u'midas. Shemitzad hayeshes v'hagai v'sheboi, that because of the self-sense and the arrogance that the person has, mizeh shehu ba'al seichel, because he is an intellectual person. As the pasuk in Mishnah says, "Re'isa ish chacham be'einav," you see, the person, he considers himself chacham in his eyes. He has a recognition of his self. There's a level of sense of yeshus and arrogance. Ein maspik shegoider es hachotzer b'mechitzos. That's not sufficient to be the chotzer b'mechitzos. With wall, there's the bird. How do you protect the bird? Because even when you're fenced in, I mean, at Torah, you do what you need to do, not what you want to do, and you're fenced in, even to the extent that you are fenced in, that you are in the level of a Beinoni, about which the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya Shaloi Avar Aveira Miyomov, that you have never violated a sin ever from days bygone. But nevertheless, still, mitzad hagaiva v'hagasus sheboy. So even if he's doing all the avodah machshava dibra ma'aseh, he's a beinoni, but because he has that arrogance and the thickness that is in the person, which is natural, therefore haseichel v'amitis sheboy hem begasus. So his intellect and his emotions are thick. V'lochein tzarich, it's not sufficient just to have a mechitza. It needs a roof. That's for the bird, and that's for the rabbanon. The wall is not enough, because when we talk about the rabbanon, as the Rebbe is going to say, we're going up higher than just the minimal, which the Torah requirement. So what do we need? Mekura begag. We need a roof over there in order to prevent from the gaiva and the gases, the bird, sort of within the klippa, the refined level. The roof meant that he should sense how godliness is unique, above, beyond his seichel. So now we understand the difference between min haTorah, which a karfif, that is Yosher mi Beis Ha'osayim. And by the way, the Rebbe in the Ha'ara discusses the whole in your Beis Ha'osayim. We learn out from the Mishkan, very interesting, but that's besides the Maimer, so we're going to just continue. But the Kivon Sheho Iker Hu HaMaisem, since the main is action. So min haTorah lochem midaraisa gam chotzer she'einem mekuru reshus yochid. From the Torah, if it's a chotzer that does not have a wall, it's more than sosayim lohukov ledira, is considered to be a reshus yochid. Yichid shaloilom, the one of the world, it's sufficient. But once we talk about the words of the scribes, midrabon, the Chachamim say it's a Carmelist. What is the idea of the words of the suffering that Rabban is to raise and to bring the person on a higher level? That he should become a vehicle to godliness, also from the perspective of his intellect and an emotion. So that's not sufficient just to have a wall. It's still got to be a Carmelist midrabanon. In order for the person to be a private domain for Hashem's unity, blessed unity, while over there it's through being a roof with covered with a roof, that's provides that protection, that level of avlah, that he shouldn't get caught up in arrogance and gasus. V'hinei, kivon, behold, kivon shahas seichel the nefesh hasichlis mitzad atzmayu b'chinas yesh, since the intellect of the intellectual soul from its own is a level of a yesh, he feels himself as an entity. So that's number one. And more than that, Shumi klipas noiga. Yes, he comes from a higher levels of klipas noiga, but he's still from klipas noiga. Lochein, therefore, gam la'achrei shahaseichel de nefesh alekis. Masik richu ka'erech shalei legabe lekus. Even after this seichel of the intellectual soul grasps the distance of him relative to godliness, which means he realizes that he appreciates that his understanding in godly matters is limited and it's materialistic. He does not really grasp the ideas over here as the way they are truthfully, the way they really are. That brings that nefesh hasichlis, makes her, comes to bittul. So, but it's a bittul hayesh because etzem it's a yesh. It understands that it's far from godliness, so it's still a bittul hayesh. She comes to be subjugated. Habitl shelo, that subjugation, eina be'erech klal habitl, the nefesh alikis. It's not the same bitl at all to the nefesh alikis. So while there is bitl there, it's still considered chatzeirecha, it's still considered the behema, because the bitl, as opposed to beisecha and heicholecha, which is in the higher level. So that's not at all compared to the bittul of the godly soul. The benefesh ha'elikis habittul shelo hi be'etzem etziusa. The godly soul's bittul is in the essence of its existence. It's not an additional thing that it realizes that it's not the same and therefore it's bottled, but in essence it's bottled. Ubenefesh hasichlis, on the other hand, but the intellectual soul, habitl shelo dover noisef al mitziusa, that subjugation is an added matter to its existence. Ube'etzem b'chinas yesh, in essence, it's a yesh. But then you have that yesh bottle because of the understanding the hafloah that it's really hagbola and it's not the way it is the etzem. So, therefore, it remains a chotzer, it remains not a diras odom, because the bittul is not the bittul of odom, it's an acquired, a new level. V'zehu shegam chotzer hamakura begag. And that's why, well, it has a roof. Why isn't it a bayis? No, it's still not a bayis. Shegam chotzer hamakura begag, even if it has a wall, that it's covered with a wall, we still don't call it a house. Still a chotzer. Shu mokim sheboy nimtzoyim balachayim kinal siv beis, as the place from the Mishnah quoted from Baba Basra that the balachayim and the migdal oif are in the chotzer. Beloy dira sodom. It's not considered to be a dira of a person. Why? Because there is an acquired bittul. The real level of a house is for an odom, where there is the essence bittul. Ki odom b'gematria ma because the word Adam is 45. That's the numerical value of Ma. Ma is the level of bittul. Who habitl the nefesh alikis shenikra Adam. That's the subjugation of the godly soul, which is called Adam al Shem Adam Elyon, because it compares to the supreme. Mashenkin habitl the nefesh habahamis the nefesh hasichlis, and this opposed to when we talk about the subjugation of the animal soul and the intellectual soul, shubitla yesh, which is the bitl of yesh, who bechinas chai shalamatim Adam. That's the level of living which is below Adam. It's not ma, because it's not be'etzem bitl, and that's why it's chatzerecho. It's still the courtyard. And now the Rebbe is going to explain the two levels in chatzerech in beisecho neicholecho, the bitl of the nefesh alikis. V'hinei gam b'habitl the nefesh alikis shtei madreges b'chlos. Also, in the subjugation of the godly soul, we have two general levels. V'hinei yadua, because it's known shebichdei shenefesh halikis tifel benefesh habahamis, in order for the godly soul to impact the animal soul, ubenefesh hasichlis, and the intellectual soul, who al yidei shaseichel v'hamidis the nefesh halikis, that happens through the fact that the intellect and the emotion of the godly soul, boyim b'medido v'agbola, they come measured and limited, be'oifen, in a way sheyu shayochim the nefesh hasichlis v'gam the nefesh habahamis, so that they should connect to the intellectual soul and also lower to the animal soul. You need the seichel amidus of the nefesh halikis to descend, come down, measured and limited, so that they can influence, impact the sichli nefesh hasichli, also nefesh habahamis. V'ad shemislapshim b'seichel, the hamida is the nefesh hasichli v'nefesh habahamis, to the extent not only that they should be connected to the nefesh hasichli, but they should actually dress up in their intellect, in their nefesh habahamis, the seichel amidus of the nefesh hasichlis and the nefesh habahamis. Benimtzo, turns out sheba seichel amidus the nefesh halikis, that when we talk about the seichel amidus, the godly soul, shtei madreges, two levels, kimoi shehem mitzad atzmam, as they are in of themselves. And the second level is commission is slapshu benefesh hasichlis v'habahamis, and how the nefesh likis seichel amidus dresses up in the intellectual and animal soul. Based as explained elsewhere, the hakoyach sheyesh benefesh likis lifel bitter v'zichuch nefesh habahamis, that the power that the godly soul has, that it can impact sorting out and the refinement of the nefesh habahamis, of the animal soul. Ulifish nefesh halikis he elikus be'etzem mehusa, that is because the godly soul is godly in its essence, and that's why it can also impact the nefesh habahamis and refine it. So yesh leimar, so there we can say shegam b'haseichel midas the nefesh halikis k'moishen islapshu b'nefesh habahamis. So even in this seichel midas, before the two madreges was the nefesh seichel midas nefesh halikis on their own, and the seichel nefesh halikis as it dresses up in the nefesh habahamis nefesh hasichlis. Now we're talking within the nefesh habahamis and sichlis, that the nefesh halikis dresses up. Shegam b'seichel midas the nefesh halikis, that also in the intellect and the emotion of the nefesh halikis k'moish and islapshu b'nefesh habahamis, as they dressed up in the animal soul. Shnei Hanyanu has these two matters. The begilui, that in a revealed way, k'moy shehein legabe nefesh hasichlis v'habahamis, as they are relative to the nefesh v'habahamis, and b'medid v'agbola, they are measured and limited. V'adugma shalohem udugmas bitla yesh, v'abitl shalohem udugmas bitla yesh, and their subjugation bitla yesh. Shalachein poilim b'nefesh hasichlis v'habahamis. That's why they can impact the sechel nefesh v'habahamis, because they're impacting a yesh, because their own openly, they're also limited and measured, and therefore it seems like a bit like yesh, and that's where they can impact. Ubepnimius, but in the inner of the seichel midas nefesh lekis will come down. Hemelakus, they're godly. They're not medida v'hagbola. They're not bitl hayesh, but bitl shalahem. Ubitl b'mitzias, then it's bitl b'mitzias. So now we have two madreges in Chatzirecho, and we have the madreges of Bayis and Heichel, as the Rebbe will continue to explain. So we can say Shadal Ledinyonim Hanal. These four above mentioned items, which is, what is the four again? Shtei Hadargis the Chotzer, the two levels of Chotzer, which we discussed before. Shema Birur, the Nefesh Abahamis Vasichlis. Over there, we're sorting out the animal soul. That's the Chotzer She'ene Mekura, and then Vasichlis, even the bird. So we make it into a Mekura, into a roof. The refined level of the Nefesh Hasichlis. Shnei ha'inyonim ba'koiches the Nefesh ha'elikis, and these two aspects in the powers of the godly soul, k'moi shehem begilui, as they come out revealed, u'k'moi shehem be'etzem mehusam, and as the way they are in their essence, who they are. Hem dugmas daled ha'ilumeis abiyah. That is similar to the four worlds of Atzilus Bria, Yitzira Nasi. Who the connection is that he is the Asiya v'Yitzira Heim Mitzias. The level of Asiya and Yitziras in the Oilamos, they are considered a entity. Ubriya, the level of Briya Rakev Shorus HaMetziah, that's only a possibility from Metzias. The Atzilus, he Afisas HaMetzias. And Atzilus is a non-Metzias. So there is Metzias, and there is Afsharis HaMetzias, and then there is Afisas HaMetzias. Umahachilukim shebein Asiya v'Yitzira. Amongst the differences between Asiya and Yitzira, which are a Metzias, Libriya to Briya, which is Afsharus HaMetzias, it allows for the possibility of Metzias who Shabitl Shabasi V'Yitzira, the subjugation level of Asiya Yitzira who Bitl Hayesh, that is in the level of subjugation of the Yesh. The Kivon Shasi of Yitzira. A Metzias, since Asiya and Yitzira are a Metzias, they're an entity. Habitl Shabahem hu davar noisov al mitziyusam. Their subjugation is something which is added on top of their mitzias. But v'habitl shabibriya shehu rak efsharus hamitzias, but the bitl that is in briya, which is only briya, allows for a mitzias. Who bitl b'mitzias. Over there, it's not bitl hayesh, but it's bitl mitzias. Hainu. That means shekol mitzi usay hu bitl. That it means that his entire mitzias is bitl, and this is also the reason v'zeu sheyitzira hu modor hamalochim shavedosu betchilo rechim motivim. We say that yitzira becomes the room, the dwelling place, the modor of the angels whose service is with love and fear, natural love and fear, because they are an entity. Uberia, but Beria, on the other hand, modern neshames hatzadikim, that becomes the room of the neshames tzadikim shabeidosam hoisa betchila rechimas sichlim, not tivim, but on the fear and love intellectual. Begam hamalochim shabeidosam betchila rechimas sichlim, and also the malachim whose avoida is in the chila schema sichlim mekoimam hu bebria. So they are in Beria. So Yitzira is the natural, those who work Avavira natural. But those that work with the intellect, they are in Beria. And the reason is, Kitchilo Rechimo Tivi Imheim Hateva Hametzius Shel Hanivra, because the fear and love that are natural, that's the nature, that's the entity, that's the exist, that's what the person is. But when you have love and fear, which are intellectual, who over there it's not because that is his nature and that is his existence. But it's shehisik. Rather, it is because the godly idea that he was able to grasp, mechayiv, that tells him that you need to love Hashem and fear from him. So it's the intellect that brings about and tells the person, obligates him to love and fear Hashem. So that's not a natural, it's based on nature, but it's higher than nature. It's intellectually understand it. But still. Since in Bria it's the idea of grasping, and the subjugation that takes place in Bria, that comes about because the intellect tells him, obligates him, that forces out that relative to God there's no real room for any entity. So even the bitl is also a metzias because it comes based on this seichel. Seichel tells him, so metzias still tells him that it's not. So while it's considered to be bitl b'metzias, not bitl hayesh, but it's still a metzias. Ba'mitis ha'inyan the bitl b'metzias, the true level concept of bitl b'metzias, u'ba'atzilus. That's in Atzilus. So bitl ba'atzilus, because the subjugation that's in Atzilus, u'loi mitzad ha'sogas ha'seichel, elo mitzad ha'lekus. So whether it's not because what he grasps, because of the intellect, which would make it still a metzias at the end of the day, but over there it's not because of the intellect, elo mitzad ha'lekus, but because of godliness. Shehu levadehu ve'en zelos, he alone is, and there's nobody else. That's where the bitl comes in Atzilus. That's when the Atzilus doesn't apply at all. The existence of malachim. Malachim, the highest place is Bria, because Bria, yes, there could be bitl b'metzias through hasoga, but it's still a metzias, but bitl, total bitl cannot be, because that's only in Atzilus, and that's why the malachim are not there. Gam loy malachim sichlim, also not intellectual malachim, only in Bria. The olam ha'atzilus model tzadikim ha'gedolim. The olam ha'atzilus is the world where is the living quarters for the great tzadikim. Shahoyu b'bchinas merkava shalamayla ma'aseichel, who were in the level of a merkava, they were chariots, they were totally subjugated beyond intellect. Bitl b'metzias. They are in Atzilus. Why are we saying that in Atzilus it's all bitl when we have intellect, emotion, we have 10 spheres? Ba'gam shegam ba'atzilus yesh spheres, although in Atzilus also there exists, we find the 10 spheres, seichel u'midas. And here we're saying there is higher than seichel u'midas. It's bitzad elikus, l'mayla ma'seichel. So while there is spheres there, the Rebbe says, but they're not mitzias spheres because they are bittel. Iu v'chayeir gamoyichad. Hara spheres da atzilus einon mitzias la'atzmon klal. They are not an independent entity at all. The iu v'chayeir iu v'gamoyichad, because Hashem and His chayis is one, and Hashem in His garments at one. So both the chayis and the kelim, the garmoyi, the chayis and the kelim are really one with Hashem. They're not a separate mitzias. This is that these 4 aspects before, which is in the service of man, the behemoth, the bird, and the koyach of the nefesh alikis, the way he dresses up in the person itself, they are similar to the 4 worlds of Atzilus, Bri, Yitzira, Asira. The habitl b'nefesh habahamis u'b'nefesh hasichlis, the subjugation that takes place in the animal soul and in this intellectual soul. That subjugation is something added to their existence. That's like the bitl of Asiyah and Sira. If the Rebbe adds in the bracket now, why does the chotzer require protection? Because since Asiyah Yitzira are mitzias, v'lochein hadvorim shenishtalshlu mehem tzrichim shmira. Things that come from them need a shmira. Be'inyan chatzerecha loshen rabim. What is the idea chatzerecha in 2 plural? Ki avoida shemitzad olam ha'asiya hu ikra hu ma'aseh b'poil. The avoida that comes because of the world of Asiya is mainly action, actuality. For that is enough protection that takes place to partition it. That level of chotzer which you just watch. So minat Torah, that's already watched. Chotzer she'einu mekura, chotzer which is not mekura. Avoida shemitzad Yitzira, and the way because of Yitzira, ikrahu midas. That's mainly midas. Lazet tzorich hashmira the gag chotzer mekura. Over there requires guarding it. The gag, you need the chotzer mekura. So that's the second level in the chotzer. So then you have aseichel v'amidas the nefesh lekis and the slapshim the nefesh abahamis, the part of the seichel amidas of the godly soul that dress up in the nefesh abahamis. Shabitl shabahem eino davar noisef al mitziyuso. There is not something added. The midas nefesh lekis, they are bottled in essence. They are lekus. Shabitl shabahem, the bitl that is in the nefesh lekis seichel midas, eino davar noisef al mitziyusum. It's not an additive to their mitziyus. However, avol hu dugmas bitla yesh. But we say that it is bitla yesh hu al derech habitl de bria. That's like the bittul and the level of bria. Bittul the nefesh lekis atzmo. So this is the seichel midas that dress up in the nefesh habahamis. So they're causing a bittul hayesh to the nefesh habahamis, nefesh hasichlis, but bittul nefesh lekis atzmo, but the bittul of the nefesh itself, koilel. Gam habitul dargas haneshama melubeshes b'nefesh habahamis k'moshe b'pnimi yusaf. Because the Rebbe said before, there is either the second level is the level that doesn't dress up in the nefesh habahamis to change it around, or even within the level that dresses up. The Rebbe said the other way was there is the part that dresses up, and then there's the pras that remains a lakus. Shu bittul b'mitzias. That is bittul b'mitzias. Well, derech habittul da'atzilus. That is similar to the bittul atzilus. So these four levels in the nefesh habahamis and the nefesh halikis correspond to the four levels of the four olamis. Now he's going to go back to explain the zohar on the pasuk. The basar beisecha, the basar heichalacha. First, chatzerecha, then home, and then heichalacha. The kadmiso chatzerecha. We start off with chatzerecha. Those are losho rabim, a plural. Chotzer shein and mekura v'chotzer mekura. Both a roofed chotzer and a chotzer not roofed. Who habirur, that represents the sorting out, v'azicha, and the refinement, the nefesh habahamis v'nefesh hasichlis, of the two klipas noiga souls, the nefesh habahamis, nefesh hasichlis. But in that case, shagam, why is it still chatzerecha? Shagam la'achre habirur v'azicha k'shulahem. Even after sorting out and refining them, hem bedarkas balachayim, they're still in the chotzer, they're still in the level of balachayim. Lebosor beisacha. Then the Zohar says, then comes beisacha. Hu gilui nefesh alikis, that is the revelation of the godly soul. Commission is labeshes benefesh hasichlis v'abahamis, and where the godly soul dresses up in the intellectual animal soul. Sha'abitl shalo, that bitl hu dugmas habitl shebebriya, that is similar to the subjugation that's in bria. V'nikra beisecha, bayis, that's called a bayis. Lebos, that's not a chotzer anymore. Just like a house is a place where the person lives, Pasuk says, the person's beauty sitting in the home, so there's a bayis. So that's already talking about an Odom. Kach Olam Habriya. So likewise, Olam Habriya, which is called Olam Hakise, the world where the Kise is, that's the place where the Odom Ha'elyon sits. She'ikir dirose shel ha'odom ha'elyon b'nivroim, the main dwelling place of the supreme Odom in Nivroim. When does it come down to the Nivroim? Is ukeshahabitl shalahem lalakusu ba'ifon shezah bitl kometziusum. That is when the bitl is in such a way that that becomes their entire entity. So that's the beisecha, the bitl of the nefesh habahamis v'asichlis is brought about through the nefesh alikis. And that becomes their mitzias. And then you come to the higher level, not just beisecha, but heichalecha gilui haneshama shelemaylo mihislapshus. That's the revelation of the soul, which is higher than dressing up in the nefesh habahamis, or also koilul gam hapnimi is the dargas haneshama hamelubeshes benefesh habahamis, which also includes the inner level of the neshama, which the rest of the nefesh habahamis. Shahabitl shelo hu bitl b'metzias. That bitl is considered bitl b'metzias. Ki habitl the atzilus. That is like the bitl of atzilus. V'nikra heichalecha. That's the high heichalecha. The inyan heichalecha. What is heichalecha? What is heichal? Commission kosuf. Ba'avaye beheichal koche. Havaye is an heichal koche. Has mipon of koloretz. Silence before him the whole world. So the gabe havaye beheichal koche. That relative to havaye, which is in the heichal koche, mizbatel has. Mizbatel has silence. Mizbatel kol inyan mitzias koloretz. The whole Metzias, all the world, Ba'ad she'ein shayich gam nefshoras ha-metzias, to the extent that it doesn't even fit any possibility of Metzias. So these are the levels of the different level of bittul, as we discussed first in the Oilumes Vatzilus Bri Yitzira Asiya, and then we also discussed in the various different levels in the Chatzeirecha and Beisecha and Heichalecha, in which we come to the highest level of Bittul Metzias, Zion. And now we're going to go back to explain why this comes before a Bris Milah. This is while before the Bris Milah, we say the Pasuk, Ashre, Tevchar, Vatkarev, Gomer. We say this Pasuk, Daled ha'olam esabiyah, because the four worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Tzira, Sia, Heim Bechlal, Seder, Ishtalshalos. They are generally, that's the order of the Hishtalshalos. Umila hilamayla mishtalshalos, but Mila is higher than Hishtalshalos. K'mayim Razal, they just tell us alaposik lam natseach ala shminis, that it's on the 8th, al Mila shenitna bishmini, that's Mila that was given on the 8th day. Umavur b'lekutetera divrei ham maschil lam natseach ala shminis, the zeh shashira shel David hoisa al zeh shemila nitna bishminihu. Why did he sing for Mila? That was given bishmini. So why is it shmini? So he says, the zeh shashira shel David hoisa al zeh shemila ki shminihu b'chinas ak shel ma'alim ma'atzilus. That shmini is the level of ak, which is higher than atzilus. And then that brings down the order. You needed to go through a Shabbos, the 8th day, so you have the 7th day, that's a week. And this Mila is on the 8th day. So we're saying that this is higher than Hishtalshalus. It's in the level of Ak, level of Keser. But the Rebbe says we can add that not only the Mila, Ilamailo, not only is it higher than the 4 worlds, higher than Ishtalshalus, but it's also higher than the 4 letters of Havaya, Loshem Hava, the source that creates the world, which is Havaya, but which is higher than Ishtalshalus. This is even higher than Havaya. From there, the 4 Ilmis come into being. As the Torah brings down on the verse, so over there, Shehu Roshi Teves Mila, that the beginning of the letters of Miyalon Shemaim is the word Mila, and the Seife Teves Havaya, and the Havaya, which means that the Roshi Teves is on a higher level than Havaya. The Mila is even higher than Havaya. The Zeh Shemila Hu Roshi Teves. The fact that Mila is in the beginning of the words, Havaya Hu Seife Teves is the end of the words, because Mila is even higher than Havaya. Avo bichdei sheyiyah shetiyam shochas agilu shelemaylo mishtalshlus aldei amila. But in order to get that revelation, which is higher than ishtalshlus through Mila, tzarich liyas tchila shleimus de ishtalshlus. First, you need the completion of ishtalshlus. K'mayim Razal, as the sages tell us, kedeshiyavir olav Shabbos echos. You have to go through a Shabbos. You have to go through a week. You have to go through Hishtalshlus. The Shabbos, who Ashleim is the Hishtalshlus. Shabbos is the wholesomeness of Hishtalshlus. And after going through the week, you can come to 8, to the gilu, which is higher than ishtalshlus. Mila b'shmini, mila takes place in the 8th day. V'yesh loymar, you can say the zeu mashikosos. The pasuk says he's halich lefonai v'heyei tomim. It says go before me v'heyei, which is the level of Yud Kei Vav Kei, is Beitom. Shebetchila tzorich liz v'hayei oisius havaya. V'hayei is the letters of havaya. There's a boimach kach lebechinas tomim. Then you come to the level of tomim, which is hagilu shalidem milah, the revelation through milah. Lochen emrim koidem abris haposuk. That's why before the bris we say the posuk Ashri Tibchar u'Tkerev Yishkon chatzirecha nizba'o betuv beisacha kadesh echelacha. And the gam belaylo shelifnei bris. This is in the bris, but the night that precedes and the vachnacht, when the Rebbe said this to Rabbi Yolos, this maimer, also in the vachnacht, when we say we learn the different zoyar, that is the beginning of the preparation of the bris. The custom is to study the words of the Zohar on this pasuk, as brought down in the Siddur of Yisakar of Yaakov Emden, because the service and the 4 matters of this pasuk, they correspond to the 4 worlds, Atzilus, Bri, Tzira, Sira, and to the 4 levels of the Shem Havaya. That's the preparation. V'akli, the achona v'akeli, that's the achona, and the vessel hagilui shalamaylo meishtalshlos, to the revelation which is from above ishtalshlos.